I sat in the gallery of the Galactic Council chamber and tried very hard not to laugh. Around me, 7 species of the most advanced civilizations in the known galaxy were solemnly discussing how humanity was going to die. They had charts, they had probability models, they had a very official-looking document with a gold seal on it that basically said, in 12 different languages, that we were finished. The Theran delegate sitting beside me leaned over. His 4 amber eyes blinked slowly, the way his species did when they felt deep sadness. His voice was low and careful, like someone speaking at a funeral. "Commander Dross," he said softly, "I want you to know, your people created beautiful music. We will preserve it." He was speaking about humanity in the past tense. I nodded. "Thank you, delegate." I looked back down at my wrist display and read the message that had arrived 30 seconds ago from Admiral Chen. 2 words. "We're ready." I closed the display and folded my hands in my lap. The council speaker, a tall Solvari named Orith, continued reading from the probability consensus report. His pale skin glowed faintly blue as he spoke, which was what happened when Solvari were being very serious. The chamber was cool and enormous, carved from a single asteroid and polished until it shone. Delegates from the 7 species sat in curved tiers, above a central platform. I was in the observation gallery on the side, present as a diplomatic witness. Essentially, they had invited me to watch them write our obituary. The Vreth Armada consists of 1,400 warships, Orith said, each individually superior in firepower, shielding, and propulsion to any vessel in the current human fleet. The United Earth Expeditionary Fleet fields 34 ships. The engagement probability model, reviewed and confirmed by all 7 member species, places human fleet survival at 0.003%. He paused. The Council therefore moves to begin formal preservation protocols for human cultural heritage, including music, literature, visual art, and historical records. Several delegates bowed their heads respectfully. I thought about Admiral Chen. I thought about the crews running on stimulants and pure stubbornness somewhere out past the Keth Nebula. I thought about the thing we had built in the dark, in a shipyard that didn't officially exist, for the past 2 years. I looked at the star chart projected above the central platform. The Vreth Armada was 3 hours from engagement range. The Council had done its math carefully. I had to give them credit for that. They were not stupid. Every species in that room had been traveling the stars for centuries before humans figured out fire. They had seen 1,000 wars. They understood fleet combat the way a master builder understands architecture, from the inside out, with absolute confidence. What they did not understand was where that confidence had limits. They had studied our ships, they had counted our weapons, they had measured our reactor outputs and calculated our fuel ranges and modeled our defensive capabilities against Vreth firepower. The numbers were accurate, every single one of them. Our ships were smaller, our shields were weaker, our weapons fired slower. On paper, we had no business being anywhere near this fight. The problem was that the paper had not accounted for a few things. It had not accounted for the fact that human pilots had been training for 47 hours straight on stimulants and cold water, because humans are one of the only species in the galaxy capable of functioning, and even thinking creatively, under extreme sleep deprivation. The Vreth operated on biological cycles they could not override. Their crews needed rest. Ours had been awake so long that rest had stopped feeling real. The paper had not accounted for the particular kind of decision-making that happens when a human being looks at a situation that is genuinely, mathematically hopeless, and decides to try the thing that has almost no chance of working, because almost no chance is not the same as no chance. Every other species called this irrational. Humans called it Tuesday, and the paper had not accounted for Project Hammerfall, because Project Hammerfall did not exist on any document the Council had ever seen. It had been built quietly, from pieces of Vreth technology we had recovered from a wreck 3 years ago, by a team of engineers who had collectively slept about 4 hours a week for 18 months. It had never been tested at full scale. We did not know, with complete certainty, that it would work. That was the part I had chosen not to think about too hard. Orith was still speaking. Something about the dignified legacy of Earth's philosophical tradition. I appreciated the effort. I really did. My wrist display lit up again. A single line from the fleet tactical feed. Vreth Armada exiting fold space. All ships confirmed. Engagement in 4 minutes. I sat very still. The council chamber continued its proceedings. They did not yet have a live tactical feed. They were working from projections and estimated timelines. They believed the battle was still 3 hours away. I watched the ceiling and breathed slowly. Then the main display screen above the platform flickered. Someone in the technical booth had picked up the fold space exit signature. The giant star chart shifted and zoomed, and suddenly there they were. 1,400 bright red marks appearing like a rash across the display, spreading and organizing into formation with the cold precision of a species that had been doing this for 3,000 years. The chamber went quiet, not the respectful quiet of a moment ago, the stunned, airless quiet of people watching something they cannot immediately process. In the center of the display, 34 small blue marks held their position, 34 against 1,400. The Theran delegate beside me made a sound that I think was a prayer. I watched my wrist display. At 47 seconds into the engagement, the Vreth opened fire with their first full volley. What happened next made the Council's lead tactical analyst actually stand up from his seat. Our 34 ships did not scatter. They did not form a defensive spread. They compressed. They pulled together into a single tight cluster, rotating slowly in 3 dimensions, constantly adjusting, presenting the absolute minimum possible surface area to the incoming fire. It looked insane. It looked like they were trying to make themselves easier to hit with one enormous shot, instead of harder to hit with many smaller ones. The volley arrived. 91% of it missed. Not because of shields, not because of evasive maneuvers in the traditional sense, but because our formation rotation, calculated by 6 pilots working in direct coordination, had moved the fleet to exactly the place in space where the volley was not. Our tactical AI had modeled the Vreth firing solution, and our pilots had simply moved the entire fleet out of it, together, as one body. The council analyst dropped his data tablet. I heard it hit the floor from the gallery. At 3 minutes and 55 seconds, Admiral Chen activated Hammerfall. Later, people would ask me how to explain what happened next to someone who had never seen it. I still find it difficult. The simplest way I can describe it is this. We pointed 34 gravity tether beams at a nearby star simultaneously, and we bent it. Not the star itself, the radiation it was already producing. We created a gravity lens, a temporary distortion in space that grabbed the star's natural output and redirected it, the way you might redirect a river by placing a boulder in its path. The focused beam that resulted traveled through the center of the Vreth formation at the speed of light. 300 Vreth ships were in that center. The Solvari speaker stopped glowing. His bioluminescence simply switched off, the way a light turns off when the power fails. He sat in the sudden blue-white flash from the display screen, and his mouth moved without making any sound. 600 years of unbroken Vreth military dominance ended in 4 seconds. What followed was not a battle in any traditional sense. The remaining Vreth fleet did what any organism does when its brain is suddenly removed. It lost coordination. Ships began making individual decisions instead of collective ones. Formations dissolved. Communication frequencies became crowded with signals that our translators could only describe as confusion and panic. Our 34 ships moved into that chaos like they had been born there, which, in a way, they had. Human beings have been fighting disorganized, multi-front, high-chaos engagements since before we had metal. We evolved in environments where the situation changed every 30 seconds, and you either adapted or you died. Other species had largely grown beyond that kind of violence before they reached the stars. Their military tradition was shaped by long, organized, logical engagements with clear structures. They were extraordinary at that kind of fighting. They had never fought anything like us. At 11 minutes and 14 seconds, the Vreth Armada broadcast their dispersal signal. In their language, it translated roughly as an order to abandon the engagement and retreat to safe coordinates. The remaining ships folded out of the area in groups, quickly at first, then all at once, until the tactical display showed nothing but empty space and a cloud of debris. 34 blue marks remained. The council chamber was completely silent for a long time. I stood up slowly, smoothing my uniform jacket. My legs were slightly unsteady, though I would not have admitted that to anyone. The Theran delegate was staring at me. All 4 of his amber eyes were wide open, which in his species indicated extreme shock. His mouth plates trembled. My communicator chimed. Admiral Chen's voice came through calm and slightly tired, the way she always sounded after something went exactly according to plan. Yael, tell the council we're finished out here. We lost 2 ships, but both crews made it to pods. All personnel recovered. We're heading home. A brief pause. Chen out. That was it. No speech, no celebration, just a mission status update, delivered like she had just finished a supply run. I looked across the chamber at Orith. He was still sitting in his elevated chair, unlit, staring at the empty tactical display. He looked, for the first time since I had met him, like someone who did not know what to say. "Speaker," I said, loud enough for the chamber to hear. He looked at me slowly. "You should probably update the report." The chamber broke open. Everyone began speaking at once in 6 languages. Delegates who had been quietly weeping moments ago were now on their feet, gesturing at each other, gesturing at the display, gesturing at me. 2 of the Keth delegates were moving toward each other in what I hoped was animated discussion and not something more serious. Technical staff were rushing to confirm the battle data, because none of them could bring themselves to trust what they had just seen. A senior Keth delegate, older than most, with gray scales along her jaw, raised her voice above the others and pointed directly at me. "Explain this," she said. "Your ships are inferior in every measurable classification. Your fleet size is 40 times below minimum viable engagement strength. Your technology index is rated 2 full tiers below the Vreth standard. Explain this outcome." The room quieted slightly, waiting. I looked at her. I thought about how to answer. I thought about what the honest answer actually was, stripped of everything complicated. "You measured the ships," I said. "You forgot to measure the people inside them." She stared at me. I picked up my jacket from the gallery seat and walked out. I found an observation deck on the station's outer ring, a long curved corridor with a transparent wall facing open space. The star we had used was visible from here, burning quietly, enormous and ancient, and completely indifferent to what had just happened in its vicinity. It had not noticed. It would burn for another 4 billion years, and never think about the 14 minutes during which we borrowed a small piece of its light. I stood there for a while, not thinking about very much. 40 years, that was how long humanity had been part of the galactic community. 40 years of being welcomed carefully, watched cautiously, and quietly categorized as a young species with potential but significant limitations. We were the newcomers, the small ones, the ones who still had wars among themselves not very long ago, the ones who arrived at the galactic table, still carrying the smell of everything we had survived to get there. Every other species in the council had evolved in stable places, predictable climates, steady food sources, gradual technological progress without the constant interruptions of catastrophe. They had optimized. Over thousands of years, they had become very good at doing things efficiently, logically, in organized and reliable ways. We had not had that luxury. We had spent 10,000 years being hit with everything the universe could throw at us, and instead of optimizing, we had learned to improvise. Instead of building perfect systems, we had learned to break and rebuild them faster than anything could break us permanently. Instead of removing chaos from our decision-making, we had learned to think clearly inside it, which is a completely different skill and one that is extremely difficult to model in a probability report. The Council had calculated our odds using everything they knew about warfare. They just did not know everything about us. I pressed my hand against the cold, transparent wall and looked at the star. Somewhere behind me, I could hear running feet and raised voices as the station processed what had happened. In a few hours, there would be formal meetings, official communications, requests for technical data on Hammerfall that we would politely decline to share. There would be a new report, with a new gold seal, that said something very different from the one they had read this morning, and somewhere past the nebula, 32 ships were turning for home. I thought about the Theron delegate's face, the past tense he had used, the careful, genuine sadness of someone who had already accepted our ending. I almost felt sorry for surprising him. Almost. The Council had assigned us a 0.003% chance of survival. They had been precise, thorough, and completely confident in their numbers. They had accounted for everything they knew how to account for. They had simply never encountered a species that had spent its entire existence refusing to accept what the numbers said. We did not win because we were stronger. We did not win because we were smarter. We won because 10,000 years of surviving things that should have killed us had burned something into our nature that cannot be measured, cannot be modeled, and cannot be predicted. We simply did not know how to stop. And on this particular Tuesday, in this particular corner of the galaxy, that was more than enough.